to my paper Critical Studies 2 with Module 4 Subaltern Studies. Today we shall look at the essay Can the Subaltern Speak by Gayatri Spivak. Spivak's essay Can the Subaltern Speak, originally published in Carrie Nelson and Lawrence Grossberg's Marxism and the Interpretation of Culture in 1988, perhaps best demonstrates her concern for the processes whereby post-colonial studies has ironically reinscribed neo-colonial imperatives of political domination, economic exploitation and cultural erasure. Here Gayatri is highly critical of the intellectual West, the so-called West desire for subjectivity. She claims that research or knowledge have served a prime justification for the conquest of all cultures that the Europe or the western part of world has done or the British has done as part of the European colonial project. And the Western scholars have presented themselves or they produce knowledge about other cultures presented in a more objective way, though it is subjective in nature. And he himself, or the colonizer, he himself, without any interest or scientific or ethical knowledge, has presented their subject as barbaric, uncouth and uncivilized, with his own political domination, economic interest and cultural motives. So she is highly critical of that. And she goes on to insist that post-colonial studies must encourage that post-colonial intellectuals learn that their privilege is their loss. So then double quotes, their privilege is their loss. And Spivak, though encourages, she criticizes the efforts of the Subaltern Studies group. We know a project led by Ranajit Guha that has reappropriated Gramsci's term subaltern, the economically dispossessed, in order to locate and re-establish our voice, a collective locus of agency in post-colonial India. Moving to the essay starts with asserting knowledge is not innocent. And Spivak criticizes Foucault and Deleuze for committing epistemic violence. Epistemic violence in the sense that they try to project Eurocentric knowledge onto the third world countries. Everything happens in the West. Everything is centered on West. The Eurocentric assumption, epistemic violence. She is of the view that Western academic thinking is produced in order to support their economic interest. Thus, knowledge is like any other commodity. It is commodified. Like any other commodity, it is exported from Europe to third world countries. And knowledge is never innocent. It expresses the interest of its producer, who produced it. This westernized knowledge tends to construct our identities. And for the third world people, Europe becomes the ideal, the supreme authority. Although she accepts or acknowledges the epistemic violence done upon the Indian subalterns, she suggests that any attempt from the outside to improve their condition by granting them collective speech or voice or an agency invariably will encounter the following problems. The first one, logocentric assumption of cultural solidarity among a heterogeneous people. This subaltern is not a homogeneous one. They are a heterogeneous people. And there is a logocentric assumption about their cultural solidarity. And the second one, dependence on Western intellectuals to speak for them. to speak for the subaltern condition rather than allowing them to speak for themselves. Thus, Spivak points to the fact that the West is talking to itself and in its own language about the other. Like other commodities, data or raw material is harvested in the third world country and is taken back to the West to be produced and sold for the benefit of the Western readers and especially the Western writer himself. So Spivak wonders if under these conditions it can be possible, whether it is possible for the West to speak about the non-West without sustaining the colonial discourse. Is it possible? The question whether the subaltern can the subaltern speak, is still controversial. So her main arguments are, she is wondering how can the third world subject, that means the subaltern, be studied without cooperation with the colonial project. Hence, she points to the fact that research is in a way always colonial when it comes to define the other, the subject over there, or the subject as the object of study, where something like knowledge should be extracted from and brought back here. Thus, basically, we are talking about white men speaking to white men about colored men or women. Thus, the validity of the Western representation of the other, as Spivak argues, by speaking and reclaiming a collective cultural identity, subalterns will in fact reinscribe their subordinate position in society. So there is an academic assumption of the subaltern collectively which becomes again different to them according to the Western logos, Western assumption, Western extension, which Derrida has put it as a totalizing essentialist mythology. It is a myth created around this so-called East or the subaltern that does not account for the heterogeneity of the colonized body, the so-called subaltern. Spivak uses deconstruction to examine how truth is constructed by the West. She takes the example of sati. As we know, sati was a practice among the Hindus in which a woman was burned alive with the fire of her dead husband. When the British came to India, they outlawed the practice of sati. Though it saved a number of lives of women in India, it also helped British to secure their rule in India. Again, the outlawing of this practice had a complete absence of Indian women's voice. According to British, white men saved brown women from brown men. Be critical. White men saved brown women from brown men. This statement created a truth that Indians are barbaric and British on the other hand are civilized, and hence their rules were justified over the Indians, the white man's burden. Thus, to state, Spivak goes on to state that human consciousness is constructed randomly. We do not construct our identities. Rather, we have written for us. We have them written for us. To conclude, Spivak is hardly impressed with Western efforts to speak for the other or try to present his own voice. She believes that the West is obsessed with preserving itself as subject and that any discourse is eventually about the discoursing agents themselves, the West themselves. So she is opposed to the Western attempt to situate itself as investigating subject, the controlling power, that is opposed to the investigated non-Western object, the subaltern, the East. So interestingly, Spivak's question, can the subaltern speak? And her reply, answer to can the subaltern speak is no, they cannot. Not when the Western academic field is enabled to relate to the other, to the subaltern, with anything other than its own paradigm. So that is it.